It happened.
Okay, boom. Okay, we're recording. Nice one. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. How's it going? How's your day been?
Yeah, good. I'm here in California, in San Diego, California. Yesterday was a bank holiday in America, so it's Tuesday, but it feels like a Monday.
Oh, nice. Feeling pretty fresh then, all right? Had a nice long
Yeah.
weekend. Yeah. How hot was it there?
Yeah, I'm in San Diego, so the weather is always very mild. It was probably like 75
Hmm.
degrees. I think that you guys use
In English, yeah, I
centigrade.
think I think that's
Yeah.
around like low 20s or something.
Yeah, so very sunny and mild and warm. Good
Hmm.
for an October day, but fall is coming, so it'll get down to in the 50s or the 60s, which will be like still pretty warm for considering UK temps, right?
Yeah, it is one of the major downsides of the UK, to be honest. Like my parents live in France, and one of the main reasons they moved was just weather reasons.
Yeah, I know. Now, where are you in UK?
I'm in Bath. Have you heard of Bath?
Bath?
Yeah.
No, sorry, I haven't.
Okay. It's like one of the oldest cities. The name is because the Romans built all these Roman baths there and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, then I've heard of that. I thought maybe that was in Italy, but
Hmm.
I've been to London and I've been to South Shields. Um, so I'm
Hmm.
somewhat familiar, but I'd love to go back one day.
You in your office there?
Yes, yeah. So I work for the military. They're all gone today, so it's a holiday for them still. So I'm just sort of like here by myself. In the office today. So it's nice and quiet. I can get quite a bit done. So I wasn't sure if this was going to be all audio or you're going to see the video portion. I wasn't sure if I needed to do my hair or not.
Okay. No, it looks good. It looks good. But it probably will be audio anyway, so you're safe. But yeah, I just like the Zoom because you can see the person. I think it's a bit the phone call is not quite as good. So what's your role in the military now then?
Okay, so are you recording from the top and then do you edit later or do you just
No, I
you
don't
just
usually I don't usually edit.
okay. Okay, so I'll tell you, my role here is as a public affairs officer. And what that means is that I work with the media, and I create content that amplifies our units, our military commands, events, our mission, and I put it out on social media and trying to communicate with our publics, and that's our audience, our uniform members, our civilian members, their families, and the media and public at large. So although I served in uniform for many years, and so now my capacity is a civilian working for our Department of Defense. And so I spent many years in uniform as what we call a combat correspondent, and I
Mhm.
covered combat operations and large scale exercises around the world. But now I've transitioned into a civilian role and put all those years of being a trooper, being a troop, what we call a GI, as a photographer. I've got my camera always handy. So I'm a photographer. Even now, I'm just not in uniform.
Mhm. It's slightly less stressful photography work you do now, is it fair to say?
Yeah, so I'm not on the front lines anymore. My current role. So the current role I'm in, I'm at a military command that does testing for communications equipment. So we're not necessarily out on the front lines or deploying, which is a nice break. But I do miss all the action. I miss the high intensity travel around the world, going to hot spots, engage with our partners around the world. I do miss that type of work, but
No,
that's for the younger generation now, the young
yeah, it's
kids.
interesting you say that because one of my good friends, his father was in the SAS, the special services, and I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, he has like fast cars and he drives very quickly, and I don't know whether that's him trying to get back a bit of the excitement. That's the
Yeah,
best,
you
isn't it?
kind of miss it when you're not in that go, go, go lifestyle anymore. You definitely miss it and you want to get back kind of that that high energy lifestyle. It never leaves you. Once you
Mm.
live in that sort of world, you always want to kind of be at that level
So
operating.
when you joined the military, did you join with the aim of being a photographer, or did you just join as a regular soldier? Or
Yeah, so I joined the United States Marine Corps, and I did want to have that job of being a combat correspondent. That was my goal, and luckily they granted that to me because I could type fast, and I took an English diagnostic test, and they said, yeah, you can write and you can type fast. So that job was granted to me, and I've been luckily having that job. I had that job for many, many years, being able to operate in many countries and share the courage it takes to wear a uniform and tell the story about our troops, our Marines, our soldiers, airmen, sailors around the world.
it's a very
So
important job. Yeah.
yeah, the military trusted me to tell their story. And so, there were many women who served before me in that capacity, but really since the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, I, tried to take that to the next level of being a combat correspondent and being reporting from all over really the hot spots as a woman being on foot patrol with these combat operating forces and being out there and capturing the imagery and the video that you'd see. And so we'd send our video and images up to the news outlets, and they would use my footage to show what was happening because it was really too dangerous for the civilian media to come along with us. It was too much danger. So they
Mm.
would use my photos and my video that I took while I was out with the troops and use that on the nightly news during those heavy Iraq years and Afghanistan years. So
Are you familiar with Don McCollum?
I don't think I know that name.
Okay, basically, he was a war photographer. I think he was a British war photographer, but I read his autobiography, and he did like the Vietnam War and things like that. I think he was working independently as like the independent press. And the thing that did really strike me is when he was literally right on the front line, just kind of keeping his head down, literally in the midst of firefights with nothing but a camera. And that's what kind of got me interested in your story as well, to be honest.
Yeah, I've been in some close calls, luckily, very luckily to have returned safe and healthy each time. Unfortunately, we've also lost several of our combat correspondents and our media officers. My boss in 2006, she was escorting magazine crew and a TV crew, and they were hit by an IED and she was killed. And wars in Iraq and Afghanistan really wasn't necessarily you had to be in the front lines or part of the infantry, but rather, anyone was at risk. And so people of any job, whether you're a cook or a truck driver or a photographer, you were always kind of at risk, some risk anyways. And so kind of moved the needle a little bit over the years as to the danger and the risks that we all take, regardless of your job. If you're set out to be an infantry, not necessarily always the ones with the danger, but we're all, we were all subject to the same danger.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky to be able to come back safely and healthy and share the courage and tell people about the courage it took for those people out on the front lines. So lots of great stories. In fact, I'm putting together a compilation book of some photos of my time in Iraq and Afghanistan, and really to highlight the people from my region where I'm at here in San Diego. There's a big military base and there's a lot of memorials and markers. And over the past 20 years from people that were killed in action. And so my book coming up is titled Heroes Live Here. It's a tribute to Camp Pendleton Marine since 9/11. So sharing the courage of those that were killed that were a part of this base. who didn't make it back. So I've finally put together, after 20 years, some of my photos.
20
And
years, 20 years worth. Wow.
yeah. So
Amazing.
myself, I deployed 5 times, to 2 years in Iraq and 3 separate tours to Afghanistan. So I never really had enough time to catch my breath and sort through all my photos during all the deployments. And so now I've finally slowed down a little bit and put it all
Mhm.
together.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was it like the first time? Do you remember the first time going out on patrol, your first tour? Where was your first tour?
Well, first time in 2003, if you can remember, 2003, shortly, a year after 9/11, I got orders to deploy to Afghanistan. So I ended up in Kabul, Afghanistan. And so, although it wasn't all that dangerous back then, this is before Iraq kicked off.
Yeah.
But yeah, a very mysterious, majestic place, Afghanistan, coming all the way from America. We didn't really know that much about the Taliban, and we didn't know really what the dangers lurking around every corner. But such a different culture. I was fascinated with just taking pictures and showing people what life was like at that time. And this is when the change from film to digital photos. I was able to send photos back digitally, back to family and friends. And it was just really kind of a revolution in digital imagery at that time. So it was right
Mhm.
at being at the right place at the right time to have
Mhm.
some cool images.
That must make it far easier, the digitalization compared to being in a war zone, having the old film, having to change it and carrying all the old film around with you, you know?
It was indeed. And I grew up on that old film rolls, and I grew up making photos in the dark room, printed in the dark room. And so
Mhm.
I've got to see the transformation from the dark room into full on digital Lightroom and Adobe, and sharing at on your phone. Within seconds, you can have an image appear on the news, on the internet, within just seconds of it happening. So it's just been fascinating, the
Yeah,
transformation.
how much, yeah. It's crazy the growth of technology. So your typical day, how does it work? Do you just go out on foot patrols with the soldiers?
Yeah,
How?
so when there's some definite planning that went into who's going to cover what patrol, making sure that everyone was set to understand the risks, and linking up with the troops, covering down on a certain geographic region and what was the goal. And usually my goal would be either to escort media or be the media to capture the imagery. Troop go out looking for insurgent activity, intelligence gathering, going home to home, trying to find out where the bad guys were, or going on a mounted patrol. And that means in the vehicles, you're just going to go drive around and look for some things, do a presence patrol, get some footage, get some video. So luckily I was trained on video and still images, so I can do both. And oftentimes that footage would then get sent up to the news media to let them know what was going on, doing interviews with people too, to let them know what really was happening on the ground.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. They
Yeah,
have
it's
ama-
really,
they have
yeah,
amazing mountains and scenery, don't they, in Afghanistan? But it's
yeah,
it's it's a hard place to fight a war.
very, as we found out really the hard way, right? It's very harsh conditions during the winter. Um, it's just amazing that the people have survived there. The Afghan people are very resilient. And I
Mm,
always note that, we were never at war with the Afghans. The Afghan people are very kind and warm and hospitable,
yeah.
despite their hardships. But it was definitely hard to operate in that environment. We don't know the language and the terrain and the roads and the weather. It's very dramatic weather there.
Mm,
But the people were very interesting, and
mhm,
resilient
mhm. Yeah,
because of,
well, that's the thing. They're resilient. If you look back through history, like the British, the Russians, everyone, that they're fighting people. They're very tribal and they're really fighting people. It's fascinating.
it is fascinating, right? And
Mm,
sadly, I wish I would have I took a lot of photos, but I didn't necessarily keep a journal. So I wish I would have wrote down some more details about things so then I could have it for reference. My daily interactions with people, because I look back at photos and I kind of remember where I was, but I wished I would have pinpointed it
Just
with
to have some
journaling.
little
So for
like
anyone
footnotes and
listening
that
out there, yeah, keeping
yeah.
a journal when you travel, or keeping a journal when you're going through difficult times, or you want to remember, I really highly encourage people to write things down. It's very helpful, you know, for later, but it also just kind of gets things so you can clear your mind, but if you write it down for memory.
For sure. Now, do you remember, I'm assuming you came under fire on patrol at certain points, right?
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, what we call indirect fire, whether it's like just, you know, small arms whizzing by overhead, or mortars dropping into your compound. IEDs were a big scare.
Mhm.
So just kind of a myriad of different danger points.
Mhm.
Just flying an aircraft was also very dangerous because of fear of being shot down or crashing, and because sandstorms or air or weather or mechanical. I did a lot of flying around Afghanistan and Iraq. And
Yeah,
so
like
that,
Chinooks.
yeah, Chinooks, what we call Black Hawk helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marine Corps introduced the Ospreys. It's the double rotor, tilt rotor is what they call it. It's kind of a space age looking thing that was introduced into the later stages of the Iraq War. So different airframes, C-130, C-17, C-5s, transports in and out of the country, the fixed wing. So just every airframe, you name it, I've probably flown in it.
You've been
So
in, yeah. So I remember,
yeah,
especially from the British perspective with their military vehicles, the IEDs at the start, it was a real problem because our troops were literally just out in like Land Rovers and stuff. So the casualty rate was just off the scale. Yet, like later on, as the machinery improved and they got more bulletproof vehicles, and you know the deaths reduced a bit. But I do remember the IEDs because it was a fairly new form of warfare, wasn't it, at the time?
yes. And like the British troops and US troops, we were like in these really slick, just Humvee open box back. And, you know, through the years, you just could see the evolution of the proper equipment needed, even the vehicles plus the body armor and the gear that we were wearing and using, the plates, the plates that go inside your body armor.
Kevlar? Is it Kevlar?
Yeah, the Kevlar plates, just the technology was improved and at a rapid rate. So it really accelerated the pace of providing the proper equipment to reduce and mitigate the serious injury that IEDs were causing.
So did the body armor get a lot lighter from your memory?
Yeah, lighter but more effective. And more effective, it actually kind of got heavier because the plates were heavier. The inserts, you inserted the plates into your body armor, heavier but more effective. So it kind of was a double-edged sword. It might not have been lighter, but it became more effective to stopping like a 7.62 round, or like an AK, a round from an AK, or any shrapnel that came from blasts. It would prevent in your core, your right in your center piece, and in your back. So those are those main places you're trying to protect. So those plates, those Kevlar plates were about this thick and about
inch
this
and a half?
high. Yeah, this wide on just on your chest and on your back. So you felt heavier, like weighing, you know, you're carrying around an extra 40 or 50 pounds on your body with body armor plus a pack plus ammo. I think I stepped on a scale once. It was 80 pounds extra plus your
Extra.
helmet.
That's
So you
crazy.
can't move very fast,
No, that's crazy.
but
That's about 40 kilos, I think. That's a lot of weight. That's a whole lot of weight. even if you're a big guy or something, that's a lot of weight. Mm.
Yes. And then for those smaller, thin guys or small girls,
Mm-hmm.
they're carrying, the same amount of weight because it weighs the same
Yeah, cool.
on a small frame. So
And the
no
heat
doubt, yeah,
as
no
well.
doubt that it saved lives though.
For sure. But yeah, in the heat, if you're doing that in like 100-degree Fahrenheit out on patrol,
Oh,
that must be horrible. That must be
yes,
hell. So
yes.
where did you go on your first tour?
So first tour was in Afghanistan. I was in Kabul, Afghanistan, and
What year was
traveled
this?
around what's that?
What year was this? Sorry.
Okay, 2003.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2003. I departed in late 2002, so about 1 year after 9/11, so it's still very fresh, landed in Afghanistan. So it was very new. And while I was in Afghanistan, the whole Iraq war kicked off. So we were sort of fighting two wars at the same time. The initial invasion into Iraq. A lot of my comrades from my base in Marine Corps were in Iraq, and I was already in Afghanistan. But I came back from there, and then a couple years later, the war in Iraq was lingering on. It was still going. And in 2006, I deployed to Iraq. I was in Fallujah and Ramadi, Iraq, at some of the worst part of the war during that year. I was there for 12 months in 2006.
Some of the worst fighting. Yeah.
Some of the worst fighting, the heaviest casualties. And we were in places in Anbar province, Fallujah and Ramadi. People may have heard of those towns, those places. And Anbar province was really, the heaviest fighting there, most casualties. So that was a real tough year because we lost probably 500 or 600 people during the time that I was there. From all different services. Even the British, were suffering some of those heavy casualties during that time.
Yeah. Did you lose anyone from your own patrol?
When a girl that I worked with, my boss, she was killed.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, and then several people from my unit were also killed. And being a photographer, oftentimes I would be out one day with one unit covering them, and then off with a different unit covering them. But then I would get word that the people that I was with the day before or the week before, someone from that group was killed. And so they would always want the images and the footage to memorialize them. So I often had lots of people that I had covered and took photos of and interviewed, then end up killed. So a lot of my footage was able to be, used and give to the parents and the family members. So at least they could have that last footage. The last photo of someone that was ever taken was from me with them in Iraq or Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's nice.
So it's
nice.
just,
It's
yeah,
very
I
nice
mean,
for the
luckily I
family.
could have it and provide it for them. Yeah, so it's kind of nice to be able to capture it for them, but tough when they say, oh, so-and-so was just killed. Do you have any photos of this person? And as a matter of fact, I do have photos of that
You
patrol.
realize you're with them last week and you're chatting to them. It's quite surreal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how serious it was until, we left there and came back and had time to reflect on just how dangerous and just how,
Far from
surreal the
normal.
whole.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, how do you cope the transition from being in a situation like that to back in civilian life? Are you ever just like, why are you arguing and stressing about these things? And they must seem so trivial, everyday challenges.
Well, you must know that the biggest complaint people have is that people back in the real world don't really appreciate what they have, all the luxuries, and people complain like, you have no idea how good you have it. But yeah, stop complaining. Life is very precious no matter what. And there are people far worse off than us, say in the UK and in the US. People are arguing about trivial things. And if you could just have them see for a moment how lucky they really are, they might be
Mhm.
more grateful.
Mhm.
And so I feel really lucky to have those experiences because I don't take anything for granted. And I realize just how lucky we are with the luxuries that we have, and running water, flushing toilets,
Mhm.
and
Not living
paved,
in a war zone.
yeah, paved
Yeah.
streets. You
Healthcare
know,
things, yeah. We do take a
yeah,
lot for granted. But that's what they say. You're in the 1% of the world if you earn more than $30,000 a year. It's, you know, it's
yeah,
crazy. It's crazy.
yeah. And so having those life enriching experiences, while it was hard at the time, it really has enriched my life because I get to see in perspective that
Mhm.
we live awesome compared to some
Mhm.
people. And watching what happened in Afghanistan with those people clinging on to the aircraft, trying to just get out,
Yeah, of course.
you know,
Everyone saw that footage. It was horrible. It was a 19-year-old, wasn't he? Like one of the Afghan national footballers or something.
yes, just young kids desperate to get out. I mean, you just feel for them. And those people are struggling right now, dealing with what they're going through. And so it's
Yeah,
just
for
so hard to
sure.
watch because you know how they're feeling because you've been there. If you've been there, you know how hard their life is. And so you just want to wish that
Mhm.
you could bring them all home with you, but you can't. So
Mhm. For sure.
that's
What
the
do you
hard
think
part.
about? I read some the US intelligence. They said they revised how long they thought it'd take the Taliban to take over from something like 70 days down to like 70 hours or something. I mean, from my perspective, from an outsider and just reading what I can on the internet and the news, I kind of thought surely they're one of the best funded, best intelligence agencies in the world. Could they not have seen this coming a bit more?
Oh boy, that's the $1 million question, right? Um,
I think it's just my conspiratorial side, but
I think we all knew what was happening, and for them to say that we didn't know this was coming, something's not right here. Something doesn't seem right because I was there in 2018,
Mhm.
and that was 3 years ago. That was my last tour, and we all knew this was going to happen. And I've been out of it for a couple of years, but to say that they couldn't see this coming seems very far-fetched.
Yeah, no,
So we'll all be anxious to see a report and an investigation.
hmm
But those of us who've been there in the military know that this is definitely something's up. Something's not
yeah.
right.
And it sort of comes on to my next point I was thinking of because I find it strange how basically I have this friend who he just works like a food truck, like a kebab truck. They sell the kebabs on the street. Yeah, in Bristol, this city I used to live in, and he goes back and forth between Afghanistan a lot. And he says that he finds it strange how the Western media they don't put any emphasis on the tribes in Afghanistan, and you don't really hear about the tribes on the news because apparently they hold a lot of sort of political and societal kind of clout. And I was just wondering, like, did you experience any tribe interactions or anything, or from being there, did you know anything about the tribes?
The Afghan tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there are different tribes and you kind of know who's aligned with whom. Yeah, you definitely, they're very tribal and they don't necessarily, you know, break away from that. They have like family names, like who's a part of what family, and different ethnicities within Afghanistan. People look differently because they come from certain regions.
Mm.
So you can definitely tell who's like Pashtun and who's Hazara. So there's different ethnicities, just like in UK or
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
US. So and they're very
Mm-hmm.
segmented.
Mm-hmm. What was
Yeah, I
the
came in contact with all different types. And
what was your experience with civilians meeting the people
yeah,
there? Like when you're on patrol, were they receptive or were they quite hostile towards the uh, the the US troops that you were with, or did it vary on location in Afghanistan?
actually they were pretty receptive and grateful for the help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at first, the early years, they were a little bit unsure what to make of women wearing uniform and having a weapon.
Hmm.
But overall, through the years, they came to appreciate our efforts because they knew that we were also putting ourselves at great risk over there to help them.
Hmm.
So never any hostility or anger. Very grateful and friendly for the most part was my experience.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Did you carry a weapon?
yeah, absolutely,
Ah,
absolutely.
because
Yeah,
you're
all
not the free press, are you? So you're something slightly different.
yeah. So as a military member first, and always having that protection was important. Never, and that was required. You always have to have a weapon,
Hmm.
and then one gun in one hand and a camera in the other hand.
Interesting combination.
Yeah. So people would say, well, what are you going to do if you have to shoot a gun or shoot a camera?
Mm.
Shoot a gun if my life or someone else's life is at risk, most certainly, but I'm there to document, because if I don't take the pictures to prove what happened or show, then it would be hard to, so my goal was always to take pictures, but in the event that I need to return fire or protect life, that would definitely
Hmm.
be my number one choice.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. In that, the war photographer's autobiography I read, he talked about this sort of surreal feeling where sometimes when he was taking photos in very dangerous situations, you almost forget that, you because you're looking through the lens, you kind of forget about the danger exposed to you. Did you ever feel anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you're on base, and that there's protected security around you, then you can relax a little bit, but not always, because there's always the threat of incoming mortar rounds, or you just never know. So you never can really relax. You never can really sleep soundly, knowing that there's always something going on at
Mhm.
night. And I worked nights too a lot, like overnight shifts and different things.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of your sleep schedule is all upside down, and you just never really can relax
Mhm.
because there's always something happening.
Do you have night vision goggles?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's quite
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Did you have the black and green color when you were out on patrol with the night vision? Or because I heard the new ones now, it's like everything perfectly but black and white. Is that true?
So it depends, but the black and white ones are amazing clarity,
Hmm.
right? And it's like heat censored, so the reverse color, so you can see so much better. But yeah, different variations through the years. And that's what gave us and our troops really the great advantage to be able to see at night. When you own the night, and we know they don't have night vision, it makes
Hmm.
it so much easier to do night. Oh, bless you.
Excuse me. Thank
Night
you. Thank you.
night vision.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge advantage.
Absolutely.
What do you think about the all the integration with autonomous vehicles and things?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think that that's the moving in the right direction. It definitely reduces the risk to human life.
Hmm.
And our drone capabilities have really seen great progress, so especially over the last 20 years. It's almost completely a drone war now. We have that capability. I think it puts us at a greater competitive advantage.
It's the element of the artificial intelligence being integrated. That's the bit that it kind of makes me a bit uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I think if we're going to be competitive against China, that artificial intelligence is a capability that we need to develop further. I think the US are lagging behind in that respect. We haven't put a lot of emphasis on that because we've been focused on conventional warfare, but moving into drones, autonomous AI is going to be essential if we are going to fight and win any wars, whether it's cyber, or space even, you know. So I think that our military planners are looking to the future and putting these chapters of Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam kind of behind us, and knowing that we're sort of just trying to stay in lockstep with adversaries, and that being if it's China or Russia, to understand their capabilities and match them.
Right. Well, that's the thing. When Donald Trump came out saying, "Oh, we're going to have a military space force," everyone mocked him. But I think that was just, you know, the media hating Trump and everything. But really, he was kind of on the money with that one. Did you see? I think it was about a month ago, or a few weeks ago, the Chinese, they like shot some missile in space and blew up a satellite or something. Did you hear about this?
I'm not sure. I know they're always doing stuff. They're always doing things, and I think that's our pace setter. That China is a pace setter, and we need to keep in pace with them in that regard. Otherwise, you're just going to take the lead and take off. I think all signs are pointing to them in the lead, and we're kind of trailing. But hopefully, we can allocate some resources to catch up and then outpace them in the space realm.
Yeah, well, their growth in general, I don't think a lot of people aren't aware of quite the speed that China are moving at. I watched this documentary, and they said China, they used the same in 1 year, 2013, they used the same amount of concrete produced and sort of spread it to build things, infrastructure, that the United States used in the whole of the 20th century. China just produced and used that in 1 year in 2013. Like it's really crazy the way they're growing their infrastructure, everything. It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. A lot of things aren't being reported, but if they were, we would find out exactly where things stand. I think we're kind of on the tipping point of just some breakthrough technology.
For sure. Okay, what time is it? 42. I was gonna say whether, I mean, it's a bit of a dark, it's quite personal as well. You don't have to answer, but like any real shocking things you saw out on patrol that really stuck with you? I mean, obviously it's very personal questions. You don't have to answer if you don't.
Well, you know, it was very high emotions during those times, you know, when it's a matter of life or limb, and you know it's just a matter of time before there's an accident or someone gets hit, or so every day is sort of a new chance to take your chances, roll the dice, take your chances on whether or not it's going to be you. Are you the one going to get hit? Are you the one that's going to go down? And so to all the men and women out there who've worn a uniform, whether it's US or UK or Australian, or all of our allies and partners, even the Afghans, even the Iraqis, you know, it takes a great amount of courage to wear a uniform and do that job day in and day out, and then go back for more and repeated deployments through 20 years. It's just like nothing we've ever seen before. Say like World War II, you're in it until the war's over. You know, that was fine. 3, 4, 5 years, you're in it. You don't go home until the war is over. And then they, you know, had that final closure. And this is sort of a very ambiguous feeling to have. Did we win? Did we lose? We're not really sure what will become of the Taliban. So I think a lot of veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan are sort of feeling left empty without sort of a winning spirit. But I just tell people, don't let the ending score define how you played the game, because, you know, it just takes a lot of courage just to get up and go do that, regardless of the outcome.
Right,
you know,
right. You played your part, kind of thing. What was it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did you have any like rituals or what I'm trying to work out is how, if you knew you're about to go on patrol, especially in a particularly dangerous area, what did you say to, was there anything you said to yourself? How did you prepare your mind before going out? Or did you just not think?
Yeah, you know, I didn't have any superstitions or rituals. I wasn't really too scared about anything. I probably should have been, but I just said, don't tell me if enemy is over here, don't even tell me. Just don't even tell me that is a sniper house over there. Knowing that it was a danger, because then I would, worry about it. But for the younger kids, so I was a little bit older too, and then all this happened, but we had some young kids, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids.
That's
I was in my
crazy.
30s, so I felt
That's
like
crazy. Being 18.
I know they barely lived, barely lived. At least I was in my 30s. I thought I had lived some, so I was on that side of like, I've had a good life. But when you're 18 and you're 19 and you're 20 and you're writing a will, because they required you to write a will
Oh, wow.
before you deploy. So you have to write down all the things, and a letter if you wanted to your families in case that you died. If you wanted them to have anything left with, and you write it out before you go. So writing a will before you leave is tough. But when you've done that, you're ready to go, no matter, accept your fate and do what you can to stay alive and make the most of it.
That's, yeah, kind of, the reality must hit home a bit more when you're writing your own will at age, 25 or 30 or something. But imagine 18, like you're still a kid. 18 years old, you're
Yes.
still a kid. Your brain's not even fully developed yet. And that's crazy, isn't it? It's scary. Brave
Yeah.
people, But
Yeah. So these young kids were, bless them. They're just so young, hadn't even lived, but yet willing to risk it all. So that means something. So the courage it takes to do that. I don't know if they knew what they were getting themselves into, but they do it anyway and accept that risk. And for those that were injured so severely, too, and then have to live with that for the rest of their lives. So we owe a debt of gratitude to them. And the greatest generation of World War II, awesome, dedicated, brave young men and women, and that legacy continues on. Like, it's not like this generation is weaker or softer, but that's still that fire, that dedication to country is still there, and the ideals that we have. UK and America still there. It's still there. So luckily, if that ever erodes, then we're in trouble, but it's there.
Yeah, luckily there's still enough of those type of people, despite all our luxuries and how soft people say, the snowflake generation and things. But yeah, there's still some tough people.
There are.
Yeah, I can't remember the quote. I read this quote in this, Andy McNab novels, like one of those. Have you heard of it? Oh, it's like a army novels, but it's this fantastic quote. And I'm going to butcher it, but it's something about, the evil men in the world are kept at bay because we have our own very hard men that do the job for us, sort of thing,
Yes. Yeah. Luckily, we do produce, luckily their parents raise these young kids every generation to, say, if not me, then who? If not me, then who's going to do this? There has to be those among us who are willing to make those sacrifices. And luckily there are, and that our veterans are well respected here in the States, and just like the UK too. I feel like there's a great deal of reverence and respect for those that serve. And if we ever lose that, we'll be in trouble. So, and hopefully there's a call to service still of those young kids that plant that seed at around 10 or 12 years old. And for those who feel it's a calling, a true calling to them, that they want to serve, and they'll be there, and that we can groom them to be our next generation of warfighters.
Let's hope so. Let's hope they're ready, and let's hope, we don't necessarily have to use them,
Right. But if they're willing, able, and mentally, physically prepared to stand ready, I think the next generation of warfare is going to be definitely like space and computer, cyber. And so training them for maybe not the kinetic, but from the air and from space and from the net, from the information warfare.
Cyber warfare is crazy. Like the size of some of the hacks that's happening to America and the US, like a lot of big companies. I think it was quite a few months ago now that there was a huge hack a huge hack on these UK companies, and I believe the US companies. And obviously, you had your gas pipeline hack as well. But that's what they say. I was listening to this podcast, and this security expert was explaining it. It was like the walls of the countries. Our military keep people out the walls, but the internet, the cyber warfare, it's kind of like an open top. How countries can attack from cyber, you know.
It is there. We're already, yeah, we're in that era nowadays. So luckily we have those smart people who are looking after attacks and hacks and viruses and things like that. We have those people who are trained to do that. Otherwise, I think that we would be in serious trouble.
For sure, for sure. 50 minutes in. Do you want to wrap this up? I'm sure you've got a busy day.
Well, sure. Thank you so much for having me. A great discussion about reflecting on our time in Iraq and Afghanistan and the power of photography. You know, history will show that there was great, brave men and women, you know, from that put boots on the ground and some of the toughest dirt in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we can close that chapter finally, learn some lessons. And then I think moving on to the next chapter of warfighting will be the next generation. And hopefully they're going to be prepared mentally and physically for those challenges that come ahead.
Yeah, let's hope so. No, thank you for talking. You've been very interesting. You've been a very interesting guest. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been great to chat with you
No
across the pond.
Your hair looks great, by the way.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, I see you.